The night smelled of rain and iron. A thin mist clung to the streets of Almora, softening the edges of the city, yet making the shadows feel deeper, heavier. Rainwater slid down the tilted roofs, gathering in the gutters before spilling onto the cobblestones. The city slept uneasily, though few knew why. Whispers had been traveling faster than the wind. Rumors of unrest, of vanished merchants, of soldiers seen slipping into the city under cover of night. But Adrian Vaynar knew the truth, went deeper than street gossip. He carried it in his chest like a concealed dagger, its weight always there, ready to cut him from within. His boots struck the wet stone with deliberate rhythm as he made his way toward the family estate, each step echoing in the narrow streets. The Vaynar name had been a fortress for generations, towering over rivals and bending the kingdoms, will to its own advantage. But that strength had not been forged through honor. It had been stolen, bought, and paid for with betrayals, stacked so high they could rival the palace walls. 3 nights ago, deep in the dust-choked archives of the estate, Adrian had found the truth. It had not been left for him, indeed. He suspected it was meant to be buried forever, but an ill-fitted panel in the wall had revealed a hidden compartment. Inside, among scrolls faded with age, lay a single parchment sealed with the wax emblem of his grandfather. The wax had crumbled under his touch, and the contents inside had stolen the breath from his lungs. The pact was written in careful, flowing ink, every word a blade. His grandfather, Lord Edgar Vaynar, had sworn loyalty to the crown in public, while conspiring in secret with a foreign power to depose the old king. The agreement detailed assassinations, fabricated rebellions, and calculated famine, actions that destroyed rival houses and allowed the Vaynars to ascend in influence. In exchange for their treachery, the Vaynars were promised untouchable control over the eastern trade routes and a permanent place in the king's council. It was not just treason. It was the foundation of everything the family possessed. Every banquet held in the grand hall, every gold coin stamped with their crest, every soldier who bore their colors, it was all soaked in blood. Adrian had stared at that parchment for a long time, his hands trembling though the room was cold. The truth made him sick, yet it also chained him. If he exposed it, the Vaynar name would be destroyed. If he stayed silent, he became part of the rot. Either way, his enemies, of which there were many, would exploit it. Among those enemies, none was more dangerous than Lord Cashin Vaynar, his cousin. Cashin had the smile of a friend but the eyes of a predator, always watching for the smallest sign of weakness. He had already been planting seeds of doubt among the nobility, whispering that Adrian's recent absences were signs of disloyalty to the king. Adrian knew the man's ambitions. Cashin wanted the council seat for himself, and would not hesitate to cut down family to get it. That evening, the council chamber was lit by 100 candles, their flames dancing across marble columns. The air was thick with the scent of perfumed ink and damp wool cloaks. As Adrian stepped inside, he could feel the weight of eyes on him. The nobles smiled politely, but their smiles never reached their eyes. Every exchange was a duel fought with words, each sentence carefully sharpened to wound without drawing visible blood. Cashin sat across from him, leaning back in his chair, one hand draped casually over the armrest as though he already owned the place. "You've been absent from the king's service more often these past months, cousin," he said with feigned concern. "One might wonder if your loyalties are occupied elsewhere." The room chuckled softly, the kind of laughter meant to test a man's composure. Adrian's voice was steady when he replied, "And yet here I am, despite the rumors." His eyes locked with Cashin's. "Perhaps you should spend less time wondering about my loyalties, and more time ensuring your own are beyond question." Cashin's smirk faltered just enough to confirm that Adrian's words had struck home. But beneath the surface, Adrian could feel the tension coil tighter. Cashin would not forget this exchange. After the meeting, Adrian moved through the corridors of the estate, his mind a storm. That was when Alara appeared from the shadows, her cloak dripping from the rain outside. She had been in his service for 6 years, though the term service hardly captured what she was. She was a spy, an informant, and sometimes an assassin, her loyalty proven in ways that could never be spoken aloud. "They're moving against you," she said without preamble. "Cashin has already made contact with the Morant mercenaries. They've been promised coin and safe passage in exchange for removing an obstacle. Adrian didn't need her to name the obstacle. He already knew. The Morinth were infamous for making deaths look like accidents or, in this case, executions. If Cassian controlled the narrative, Adrian would be branded a traitor, dragged into the public square, and his head would be displayed as proof of his guilt. The irony twisted inside him until he almost laughed. A Vaynar executed for treason, when treason was the very Bloodline's inheritance. "Ilara," he said quietly, "if I fall, the truth dies with me. And if Cassian takes my place, the pact will remain buried forever." Her eyes were cold as winter steel. "Then we make sure you don't fall." For the next 3 nights, they planned. Ilara brought word of Cassian's movements, his meetings, the mercenaries slipping into the city through the eastern gate. Adrian began shifting his own pieces, calling in debts owed to him by lords who preferred their past sins to remain unspoken. He knew it would take more than politics to survive what was coming. On the 4th night, the storm arrived. Adrian was in his study when the sound of steel rang out in the courtyard below. Ilara's warning had come just in time. The Morinth mercenaries had chosen speed over subtlety, storming the estate under the cover of rain. Adrian drew his sword, the weight of it grounding him in the chaos. Shadows moved through the corridors, and the clash of steel against steel echoed like thunder. Cassian himself did not come. Of course he didn't. Men like him never dirted their own hands. But Adrian intended to change that. Cutting through the attackers with practiced precision, he made his way toward the council chamber, where he knew Cassian would be hiding, waiting for the news of his cousin's death. When Adrian kicked the doors open, Cassian was there, sipping wine by the fire. The surprise on his face was almost worth the bloodshed it had taken to get there. "You're supposed to be dead," Cassian said softly, as though the fact itself were an inconvenience. Adrian stepped closer, rainwater dripping from his cloak onto the polished floor. "So are you," he replied. Cassian's smile returned, though it was thinner now. "You wouldn't kill me. We're blood." Adrian's eyes were unblinking. Blood is not always thicker than water. Sometimes it's poison. The sword's point hovered between them, and for a moment the only sound was the crackle of the fire. Cassian's gaze flickered, and Adrian knew he had seen the truth in his eyes. This was not a bluff.